All right, so welcome to Geo Coding and Google Maps. As per the usual, there is no formality, just shout out questions. Before we start, we should do a little bit of business, I suppose. We don't yet have a topic for next month. If somebody wants to do one, please let me know.
Get that squirrel water gun guy.
Yeah. If no one comes up with one, then the one I will probably do is advanced imager manipulation. So it's basically doing crazy stuff like you could do in Photoshop, but programmatically through Perl. So it'll be things like showing you how to add a bevel to an image, how to do masking, how to do skewing and morphing images, shadows, all kinds of crazy stuff. So anyway, so yeah, that'll be what we do next month. But this month, we are talking about geocoding and Google Maps. Who here has done anything with geocoding or GIS? So a little over half the room. Holy crap, that's a lot. Okay, and I don't know where to go with that. So we'll start with this. What is geocoding? Does anybody want to hazard a definition before I give the official definition? No? All right, fair enough. So geocoding is basically that you can find a description of a location via coordinates or vice versa. That's sometimes called forward and reverse geocoding. So you're basically, a description of a location would be like a physical address, a zip code, a FIPS code, any of those kinds of things.
Or the name of the city.
Or the name of the city, or the name of the establishment, like Essen House, where we are tonight.
Lunar craters.
or that. So, and then the coordinate system is almost always latitude and longitude these days. So, as I said before, it can be done by lots of different things. So has anybody here heard of a FIPS code before? Okay, 2? All right. So a FIPS code is actually a type of geocoding that the U.S. government does for census data. So FIPS stands for federal, I can't even remember what it stands for, it's federal something. And it basically assigns a code to a state and a county. So there's a 2-digit code for a state and a 3-digit code for a county. Put that together and it'll tell you, what county this data belongs to. And they need to do that obviously because their census data is granular to the county level. They don't go any more granular than that. So then postal codes, street addresses, land parcels, geopolitical boundaries such as state border, city border, that sort of thing. There's lots of descriptions that you might use for geocoding. If you have ever seen a presentation by Google for Android or by Apple for like Apple Maps or something like that, or iPhone, they will talk about their reminder software will allow you to set up a geofence around this location so that when you leave this location it will remind you to do something. Right? Geofence is just a fancy way of saying that they are using the geocode of this building to say when you leave this defined area you will be reminded. So that's that. Did you have a question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably good to mention, even though yes, if you have numeric coordinates, they are almost always lat long. They don't always have to be.
Right.
There are, I don't know, 100 or 200 different coordinate systems in common use.
There are that many? I didn't realize there were that many. So
the reason
okay.
being that almost every state and country has an official coordinate system that's designed to make the latitude, or the equivalent of latitude and longitude, as much perpendicular as possible in that area. So the further north you go from the equator, the more odd-shaped an actual latitude longitude box will be. It's going to be more and more trapezoidal as you get north.
Mm-hmm.
So countries that are not close to the equator tend to have their own official one that resets it back to this point on the Earth is going to be square.
Okay. That's good to know. I knew that there were others in existence. I've seen them, but I didn't realize
that's
there were.
why.
I didn't realize there were hundreds of them. So that's a
And they all have their own code letter, name.
right. Yeah, that's cool. Or not really, not cool, but understood.
Canada probably then?
Probably. And each province, except Canada, I'm just guessing, Canada probably has one for the whole country, and then each province probably has one. And then some of the Canadian provinces are so big, they probably have more than one for south versus north.
I've definitely, actually, I know state of Wisconsin has one for
They
parceling
do.
out land.
Mhm.
So
That's exactly why they're defined that way, because the surveyors wanted to make sure that they could just describe square parcels by exact latitude, longitude, or exact coordinates, and
Right.
not have to worry about the deviation from squareness.
right. Yep. So anyway, for the purposes of tonight, however, we will be using latitude and longitude exclusively as our coordinate system. However, we may be using any number of descriptors to
Yes.
define a location.
Oh, just one
So,
more thing. If you
yes.
happen to run into those kinds of coordinates, all of the commonly available geocoding packages, as far as I know, will allow you to specify any one of these coding systems, or at least any of the common ones.
Do they mostly use like the same type of transformation?
Oh yeah, they're all just pairs of numbers. It's just a question of, are they actual latitude and longitude, or are they a grid that's actually made square on like this northerly or southerly chunk of Earth. You just have to be careful to specify which. I'm trying to remember. WGS, and there's 3 numbers is the actual, or 4 numbers is the actual latitude longitude system. So it actually has a name.
Sounds like a bigger trap than time zone.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
it really is.
And actually, time zones are part of geocoding, so we'll get into that too. So, all right. So where are we? So tonight, for the purposes of this talk, we are at the restaurant/bar called Essen House, and so this is a Google map of where we are. If you were to type Essen House into Google Maps, it would pop up basically this, and that would be true of whether you're using Google Maps or MapQuest or Mappy.com or the Bing Maps or any of those things. So anyway, it's when it did that, when you searched for that thing, it behind the scenes was actually doing a forward geocode lookup. It's saying, I have the name of this descriptor, and now I want to find, is there a location that ties back to a latitude and longitude for that descriptor. So that's that. And you'll note that it also puts out some other points of interest that are nearby. So there's a few other restaurants listed on this map as a result of that. So Essen House, how do we define what is Essen House? How big is it? Where is it? Any of that kind of stuff. So here are a few of the kind of descriptors that we can use. Its name is Essen House, right? Although the official name comes back as Essen House Restaurant and Bar. But its name is Essen
At least
House.
according to Google.
At least according to Google, right. Every geocoding system can have its own labeling system. In fact, Google can have multiple labels per thing. So, because it's just a label, so you can attach whatever. So the official latitude and longitude for this point is this.
Which is so ridiculously high in precision that it doesn't have a spot about this big somewhere in the floor.
So anyway, so that's our latitude and longitude. Our address is 514 East Wilson Street in Madison, Wisconsin. Our city is Madison, Wisconsin. Our zip code is 53703. Our FIPS code is 55025. All kinds of stuff, right? And each of these has varying degrees of precision, right? So the latitude and longitude there is, it's going from most precise to least precise from top to bottom there. So the name of the place is about as precise as you're going to get. Then coordinate-wise, you have latitude and longitude, which is very precise. And then we move on to the street address, which is pretty damn precise. The Madison, Wisconsin is a little less precise. 53703, I guess, technically is slightly more precise. It should have been up one. And 55025, as I mentioned before, specifies Dane County, so it is very, very imprecise as things go.
FIPS codes is that correspond one-to-one to counties.
That's right, 1-to-1 to a county. Yep. So anyway, these are all examples of geocoding a label to a coordinate set. All right. So why does geocoding matter? Can you guys guess what are some of the reasons why geocoding could be used? Just shout them out.
Education comparisons.
Okay, educational comparisons.
Here I am, I want food, what's food near this?
Yeah, what's around me? Okay. How do I get somewhere, right?
You already mentioned it with FIPS codes, government census data and other.
Exactly, government census. So you need to go there, you need to know what time it is there. You want to see what is around that location. Census data, of course. Advertising and marketing is a huge thing, you know.
You need a consistent way of storing locations in some database, whereas people may specify them in a number of different ways, and you need to translate them into one consistent way.
Exactly. So if I were to build a site where I was running event data, and somebody said, I want to run my event in Madison, Wisconsin, if I just typed in Madison, Wisconsin, that could mean any number of coordinates in Madison, Wisconsin. It could be centered in the city. It could be centered on a particular zip code. It could be the entire boundary of Madison, Wisconsin, whatever. There's all kinds of different things. But ultimately, in the system, I would like all of those things to be basically the same. Also, they could spell it differently. They could type just Madison and mean Madison, Wisconsin, but Madison is a common name that could be used all over the place. It could be Madison, Wisconsin, USA. So different label for exactly the same thing. So there's lots of, geocoding helps with the unification of all these labels to a specific set of coordinates. And you can get, of course, more specific. So if I was holding a convention at a hotel, then you could say it is that hotel, which is in a specific zip code within that city, within that state, and so on.
What if you're really out there in the world, like Facebook, you can have multiple conventions at the same hotel, dude.
Yes, you can have multiple conventions at the same hotel.
Then you want to know which room.
You'd want to know what?
Which room.
Which room? Yes.
But also there may be two hotels on the same chain in the same city, so you have to be...
You have to be specific about which hotel is which. Yeah. So these are all the reasons why geocoding matters. So there are lots of ways to get geocoding data and use APIs. You don't have to go out and map all this stuff yourself, which is good. So here's a list of just some of the ways that you can get this data. The two big ones in the industry currently are Google and Here.com. So you've probably never heard of Here.com. Most people haven't, but they've heard of it via some other name. Here.com is formerly a company called Navtech.
I've heard of.
They are owned by Nokia. They power Bing Maps, Yahoo Maps, Nokia Maps, and Facebook Maps. So it is used by a lot of different things that are relabeled. So you have probably used Here.com without actually knowing that it was Here.com. Yeah.
Here.com was just sold.
It was just sold? Damn it. So I'm out of date?
The German car maker consortium bought them.
Oh, okay.
So BMW, Mercedes, Volkswagen.
All right.
Yeah.
I had no idea that it was just sold.
It happened 2 weeks ago, a week
That
or
would
two.
be, they bought it from Microsoft, because
Yeah.
Microsoft owned Nokia.
Right, yeah.
No, but
No,
Microsoft
actually,
didn't buy
Microsoft
that
did
part.
not. No, they only bought most of Nokia, not the. They left the other part, including the maps. Nokia sold off the maps to this other company.
Huh.
They're trying to shed everything, but I think some kind of software services business and reinvent itself.
Corporate politics. I had no idea that any of those transactions took place. But believe it or not, MapQuest is still around. I was shocked to find that out. And not only that, but it's actually used by a lot of people still. The list of companies using it on their site is impressive.
Is it any better than it used to be?
It is still, from what I could tell, their main website, mapquest.com, is still horrible.
Okay.
It's better than it was. Like it's not just static images that it's throwing up,
Okay.
but its user interface is nowhere near as good as Here.com or Google Maps.
The Yahoo of mapping.
Yes.
Yeah,
is.
it's worse than Yahoo because Yahoo uses here. So, but yeah, it's pretty bad. However, their developer site actually looks pretty nice. So I don't know. It must be a different team that's developing their APIs and documentation there, because that all looks very modern and nice, and their web front end looks like a pile of junk. So I don't know.
AOL bought out MapQuest.
AOL bought out MapQuest.
Verizon bought AOL about a month ago.
You know all the mergers and buyouts.
Can you explain Alphabet?
Yeah, I can't really.
So then another popular one is OSM or OpenStreetMaps. This is used by Craigslist. It's used by a lot of other places too, but the biggest name that's using it is Craigslist to do their map locations. So like if you're having a garage sale and you post that to Craigslist, then you'll post a map location of where that is, and that's actually an OpenStreetMap behind the scenes. USPS, this is another web service that you can use. The United States Postal Service has a whole suite of address lookup APIs because they're delivering packages, so they have to have this in there. So if you're just looking for that sort of stuff and you don't need the maps component of it, you just want to look up addresses and make sure that address correction is good, USPS can do that. And virtually every shipping carrier that you have ever heard of, in fact, every shipping carrier you have ever heard of has a similar service. They may just piggyback on top of USPS, or they may piggyback on, one of these other data sources, but they have it branded as their own API. Yeah.
Didn't you do a presentation on getting and putting address information?
From USPS, yes. Yes, I did. I wrote a little module called, I don't even remember what it's called now. Can't remember. But it gathers it's allowing you to post multiple requests to USPS at the same time, gather up all that information, then display it. So it's completely asynchronous, whereas the normal Perl module is synchronous and therefore slow.
Yep. No, thank you.
Anyway, man, I'm writing too many modules. I can't even remember which ones I'm writing anymore. Either that or I'm just old. Maybe that's it.
Efficient.
If you put into your favorite search engine zip code database, these companies are still around as well, where they will sell you varying degrees of data that you can import into your own local database with zip codes or postal codes of various countries. So for a fee of like $50 a quarter, they will give you an updated list of all of the addresses or zip codes to latitude and longitude, to FIP codes, to whatever. There's all kinds of different little pieces in there. And sometimes it has extraneous data, like it'll give you hospitals in that region or whatever. It's tied to a specific industry. Those are not, those are very useful if you need to have an offline data set so that you can search without being connected to the internet, or if performance is a concern. Although these other systems, Google, OSM, all those things have sub-millisecond return time, so it's not like it's a huge deal. But it's still, if you
setting up a package delivery business, you probably want one of those.
yeah, but you might need a local zip code database, and there are hundreds of providers that would be happy to sell you a subscription service to get that data updated quarterly.
There's also restrictions, at least with Google, I know, on how many API calls you can make over a period of time, and you have to pay if you
Right.
for 25,000 an hour.
You're absolutely right. There are limitations. It's 2,500 per day is how many requests you can make to the Google APIs, or pay. And it's expensive because here's how I know it's expensive. I haven't purchased it, but I know that they don't list the price. It's call for pricing, and therefore that is not a good sign. Yeah. So anyway, I chose Google for my particular project. Quick tests showed it had all the features that I needed, so that was good. And I also did some tests with here.com because so many companies are using it. I thought I should at least give it a test, and that actually was kind of buggy. Their user interface bugged out my browser twice, and some of the features that they advertise as being these really cool features don't work, or at least they don't work very quickly. They're really long. So like they have this location API that will allow you to see the map layout inside of a building. So you could say, let's say I'm going to this shopping mall, and I could pinpoint the different stores within the shopping mall, right? Or if I'm at a convention center, I could pinpoint all the different locations within the convention center, or the, or a stadium, or whatever. They advertise that they have 12,000 of these large buildings mapped out, and I tried to use their demo of that. At first I couldn't get it to work at all, and then later I got it to work, but it took, it loaded the map fairly quickly, like you'd expect a Google map to load. But when it tried to load the map within the map, to show this building data, it took somewhere around 15 seconds to load that data. So that, when I'm doing a quick test and I see anything that takes 15 seconds to load some data, that's an automatic red flag. And OpenStreetMaps I also looked at because I like the idea that it's open, and I like the Craigslist is using it. I'm a big fan of Craigslist. However, their APIs are very convoluted and not easy to use, at least compared to Google. Google is very straightforward. A quick post and get a JSON response back. It's very simple key parameters. There's nothing complicated about it. OpenStreetMaps, just their documentation alone is complicated, let alone the actual services themselves, the different things that how they're named and everything is complicated. So anyway, I ultimately chose Google because of that. So signing up for Google's APIs is pretty straightforward. You have to go to this URL. This URL is not easy to, it's not like easy to find it, but it's linked from all their different API documentation things. So once you read through the documentation, it'll say, hey, you need to sign up for this, but you need to read because it's not like it's a big shiny red button somewhere.
Like 2 or 3 days. It was 2 or 3 days into my project before I finally found that. Yes,
Yeah.
it took a while.
Yeah, they could make that part a little easier, but I'm sorry, you said something?
You can manage all your Google API keys if you're working
Yes.
with various services. It's nice that they've consolidated in one place.
Yes, it is nice that they have consolidated it all into one location. You're not having to sign up for individual keys for individual services or any of that kind of stuff. So when you go into there, you do have to, because it is consolidated, like he just said, you do have to sign up for each API individually. So just because you have a key doesn't mean you have access to any of these APIs. You actually have to enable each API separately. There are a few that come with it by default, like the BigQuery API. But the ones that, if you're going to do Geo Coding type stuff, I've put them up with arrows there. There's the Geo Coding API, the Google Places API, and the Time Zone API are the ones that we're going to talk about tonight. So anyway. So here's a quick little piece of Perl code to look up an address. I have a few modules here that I've loaded: URI, HTTP, Tiny, and JSON. I'm assuming you guys have all seen or at least have a vague understanding of what these particular modules do because they're fairly common. And then we need to access this particular URI. So when you go to Google's documentation, if you scroll about like 3/4 of the way down the page, on each of these individual services, they will give you, here's the URI that you need to call. And all of them are going to be HTTPS all the time. And then the reason I'm using URI module is because you want to manipulate the form parameters that you're passing, and rather than just concatenating strings together, this is a little bit nicer. So you always have to pass your Google key in when you're making these requests, or it'll say invalid request. I will say that their error messages are not terribly helpful. Like at first I didn't know why it wasn't working. I didn't realize I had to have a key to use it. So it just said invalid request. It didn't say you need a key. Anyway, their documentation is very clear had I read it, but I hadn't at that point. And then you type in the address that you would like to search, which could be something like just a city name or a zip code or a complete address, whatever. This would not be the place that you'd put in the name of a business, however. It's got to be something that represents an address of some form. So we've got that. Oops, I'll go back. And then we will make our request, and we'll output the formatted address as well as the location in this case. There's all kinds of data that comes back, and I'll show you that in a second. So here are a couple of command lines. So I typed in geolocation 53703, and that would give me back this formatted address along with the Latin long for that formatted address, and 514 South Wilson Street, and that'll give me back some other stuff. Note that I typed in South Wilson Street and it came back East Wilson Street. It's actually auto-correcting for me. And when, now this little output that I have here is only looking at the first result that comes back, but it actually came back with East Wilson Street and West Wilson Street as results for this.
I was going to say, yeah, how would it know which direction to point you in?
Right. So, anyway, so this is what a full response looks like, and then I'll drop to a command line so we can actually play around a little bit. But I just want to let this scroll by a little so you can kind of digest what the response is. So it breaks up all the different address pieces into different block elements so you can kind of interrogate that at will. And then it'll have a nice little formatted address which puts that all together for you, which is nice because having to interrogate all those things just to create a formatted address is kind of a pain.
Even more detail.
Oh yeah.
It's crazy what you get back.
Partial match.
It's almost a hassle. So you
Oh, it's got a place ID in there too.
Yes. Yeah. And what we were talking about earlier today, Dave, watch there's a place ID for each of these that comes back.
Yeah.
So it'll be just a little bit after this. So this is what result. This is the result set.
Their mathematics code
Oh,
must
wow.
be quite interesting.
Well,
to
that's a really
produce
long
that
place ID.
long string of nines at the end there.
That's a wee bit long.
Yeah. That's their precision, man. It comes back really precise, apparently.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That's a rounding error
Yeah, that's
there.
I was going to say,
Issue.
and just the longitude, not the latitude.
Yeah.
Let's see here.
Buffer overflow, grab some more stuff.
There we go.
I think that's a floating point rounding error.
If I should leave it.
Okay, so here's my, let me blow it up a little more. You guys see that okay?
Sure.
So again, we just have this is not a very nice little application here. I just whipped this up and this is just the code that I showed on the screen before. So it's very simple, very straightforward, no error processing here, nothing, just to show connecting to their service. So we can type in whatever we want. So for example, I could type in 1600 how do you spell Pennsylvania
Although it
Avenue?
should correct for common misspellings, right?
Yeah, it probably will. I'm not even going to type in Washington, D.C. here. We'll just see what comes back. So it brought back a lot of different stuff. Let's see what the first result was. I should have moored this.
You might need to, again, you might have gone off whatever your buffer is.
Yeah. Well, my buffer is actually enormous, but still. Okay. 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, Charleston. Yeah. West Virginia, so it's not the one we were looking for. But I can get in.
No, it's 1500.
No, it's
It's 16,
16.
yeah. Well then,
You're also on the watch list now.
12,
Yeah.
1265.
Yeah, I just flagged this.
1265.
So now I got the right one because I put in Washington, D.C. You know, it might be, if I put in just D.C., it might do. Yeah, and it still did it right. So anyway, you can, like I said, you can do other stuff here. I might even be able to like shorten these. See what it comes back with. Pennsylvania Avenue South, District of Columbia. So yeah, it's still finding it. So anyway, so yeah, that's a simple address-based geolocation, right? Any questions on that before we move on? Anything you want to try that's not, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue?
This is address lookup, right? So you just have to have an address.
An address of some type. It could be a country name. It could be a zip code. It has to be something that is address. It can't be the name of a business or a monument or anything.
Or something like Korea.
I was going to say, how about geographical features? How about Lake Monona?
Give you a lot of those.
So it brought back South Korea when I typed Korea, and gave us Latin long. It did not bring back North Korea, interestingly enough.
Try Lake Monona. Let's see what it gets from that.
Lake Monona.
This is a natural feature.
Yep. Yeah, so this is another little feature that I didn't talk about. It tags all the locations with different little tag names, and you can actually, when you make the request, you can tell it to only bring back stuff that matches these particular tags. So, anyway. All right. Good?
Is that bounding box always square?
I believe so, yes.
Just gives you a northeast corner and a southwest.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not square, that's
Right.
the thing. It's a latitude-longitude range, which will be a trapezoid most
At
of
the
the time.
equator, it's
Or-
almost square.
It's
Yeah.
semi-square.
Right.
Okay.
Structure won't even be a trapezoid.
No, because the both
Odd shaped thing.
Spherical geometry.
Right.
It's complicated.
It's complicated. That is a great answer. Oh crap! I should have.
That again.
I should have hit. Wait, maybe I can.
You skip it.
Nope, it won't let me skip it.
We'll just talk.
Oh wait, you know what? I can do. I can do this. All right. So, imagine, if you will, that we now have looked up a location, but we want to know what time is it in that location, right? Or even be able to predict a time. Like we know that we're going to have a meeting at 3 p.m. our time with somebody over Skype or whatever. So we need to know what time it is for them.
Yeah.
So we're going to need to look that up, right? So Google has a nice little lookup for time zones, and so that's the address of it. And note here that it's a location. Location in Google terms is a Latin long string. So it's lat, comma, long, all is one string.
Can you give it a place ID instead?
No, it must be a Latin long.
But you can use your place ID to get the.
You can use the place ID to get the Latin long.
Interesting. I'm surprised.
Yeah.
It would-
Well, actually, maybe you can. I did not try it. It is not in the one-page documentation that they give.
Okay.
So maybe you could put in a place ID and see what happens.
gonna
We can.
say,
We'll try
we'll
it
try
in,
it.
in a
Yeah.
moment. Could you get the door quick? So the other thing that you must put in for this one that's different than the other one is the timestamp. And Google timestamps are always Unix time. Yeah, they're always an epoch value, right? And the reason for that is so that it can test, or so that it knows relative where you are, you know, what time zone differences and things like that, right? So anyway, it'll help with the calculation of the time zone, because time zone is a very fluid thing.
Like North Korea started happening.
Okay. So time zones are fluid in their borders, and time zones are also fluid because there are lots of different little laws that change. Like you could have daylight savings time, or you could have something else.
And it might change at different times of the year.
And it changes at different times of the year, and exactly.
President, who's a dictator.
Yeah. So anyway, in Google's own documentation, they even talk about how they don't always get this right, because things are in such flux all the time that they will get stuff wrong. And even if you use Google Calendar, the front end app, that comes with Gmail, you will. They will put that into the documentation there, and they give like 5 or 6 examples of things that have happened where, screws up things. So
That's only based on probably the zip code that you put in for your own profile,
for what?
for your Google.
No, what they were saying is why it screws up is, for example, Russian Parliament will change their law about what they're doing for daylight savings time. Now the
It
country's
takes a while for that news to get to Google and for Google to reprogram their database.
exactly. So, and meanwhile, if you have a date in your calendar that happens during, like there was supposed to be an event triggered, but they haven't updated their stuff yet, the timing will be off because it's no longer it's still taking into account that there is daylight savings time even though there isn't anymore. So locally, they will show up at the wrong time for the meeting because your time zone is information is off.
People trying to cover their ass and saying, "Don't blame us if that happens."
That's one of the reasons that the time zone database is one of the most frequently updated things that I've ever used. They're constantly.
Okay, so and in this case, we're going to get back a time zone ID. There's a bunch of other stuff, but time zone ID is simply a name for what that time zone is. So like America/Chicago would be a time zone ID. So this is an example command line. I have typed in a Google location, or I'm sorry, not a Google location, a Google location. It's again a string of concatenated values of lat long with a comma in between, and then I get back America Chicago. And this is the full data set that comes back from this. So it gives you the offset, daylight savings time offset, as well as the raw offset, time zone ID, and the time zone name. So let's go ahead and play with this a little bit. Perl Geo TZ. Oh, you know what? Let's look up here quick and get right here. Well, first I want to get this in there to make sure we're doing it. And I did that wrong. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to do this.
With all the knives.
Okay, so we now have our data coming back. So now we'll scroll back up here, and we'll get the place ID for this place. And I don't know why the place IDs are very different. Sometimes they're like this little 12, 16 characters, and sometimes it's this like ungodly 100-character string. I don't understand what the difference is there.
That was more like 24.
Only Google knows.
Anyway, so that's request denied. It's an invalid location parameter, GeoTZ. So now let's change this to place ID and see what happens. So this is an interesting thing with Google. In their result set returns, it's place underscore ID, but when you send the parameter to them, it is place ID with no underscore. I'm not sure why the inconsistency there, but
Communication.
Probably
No, I
PHP.
think it's probably a pattern. Input is one way.
Yeah.
So it knows it's an input parameter versus
except that if it's a single word, you'd never have that.
Yeah.
Well,
No.
I work in an environment where everything that goes in has a pound sign at the end of the variable name, and everything that comes out has. Well, no, then the native database clean address comes back with underscores between the spaces, but then on the back end, on the server side, the local code, there's no spaces, camel case, no pound sign. So when you look at a variable, you know whether it was in or from another system or from yours. There's a system. Sorry.
Okay, so it is giving us an invalid request, so apparently place ID will not work. So, moving on. Any questions on this before we move on? I guess?
Oh, did you try it again now that you changed your code?
I did.
Oh, you still did. Okay.
All right. The Google Places API has a bunch of different methods that you can call. We're going to look at two of them. One is nearby search, and another is to look up the details of a place. So nearby search will allow you to do basically what you do on Google Maps. If you go in and type in something, it'll show you the things around this. So like we typed in Essen House, but then it also showed all those different restaurants on the map at the same time. That was a nearby search. So in this case, again, we have a new URL that we're calling.
You could also look for like all the hospitals near here, right?
Right,
Or all
yes.
the whatever is.
Yep.
Power station.
Yep. Yeah, and you can use the types filter on that too. So you don't have to type in a keyword when you're searching. You could use the types filter to say, give me all of the government buildings in this location. Anyway, so with this, again, we're throwing in the key, and we're throwing in our radius, and their radius is in meters. And then we're doing a location, which is again a Latin long. So from this point, we're going to search 10,000 meters around this point to see what's there. And then we can also give it a name if we want to, which is again a keyword search within that location. So, and the rest of this is basically the same, except that I'm going to loop over the result set because it's going to give us multiple results in most cases. So I'm just going to output the name and place ID of each of those results when we do this. I said look up time zone there, but I didn't. It's not. This is nearby places. All right. So that's an example, and let's go ahead and do that. Places, actually. Right.
Very simple too.
So I have to do the. There we go. So I'm going to search in DC there. Places. And then we're going to type in monument. So that should come back with like Washington Monument, that sort of thing. Oh, I should have moored that.
Sears Monument.
So, yeah, Sears Monument Company. It is a store, a point of interest, and an establishment. Anyway, so there's that. And, wow, it only came back with one result.
What would you put for radius?
I only had the 10,000, I think, so.
You're in Charleston.
Oh, was I in Charleston? Did I pick the wrong?
Make it 100K.
That could be a reason why the credit was.
All right, so let's go back to the address search quick. Okay. Oops. Should've gone down one more. All right. So we'll use this Latin long here.
To me, this is an interface fail on Google's part. That it doesn't give you back something that you can just pass right back. It makes you actually take those two things and concatenate them together.
I agree with you. So it's also weird to me that it's one field.
Right. Yeah.
They're clearly two different bits of
Right.
information.
Yes.
But all right. So all right. Balls. Look at all of those. Washington Monument, Lincoln Memorial, Fort McHenry.
Monument Parking Company.
So anyway, those are all our little things. And
Monument Street Auto Center.
Realty.
all right.
Ooh, the Taft Monument. Everybody goes to that one.
Whoa! I didn't even know there was a Taft Monument.
So
Who would have thunk it?
Show us the Taft Monument.
we're getting to that actually. We'll look up the Taft Monument as our next thing. So it's pretty clear, right? Like how this works and all that. This is just giving us back a tiny amount of information about each of these places. So the next thing you want to do, if you want detail about a place, you need to actually call the Places API again to get the detail of a specific place. Let's go look at how that works. Oh, yes, a full response from the Places API. So this is the, again, nearby search here.
Oh, they really meet. They got the opening hours and everything.
Should only have
Height?
the Star Wars thing.
Photo reference. Oh wow, this is everything.
Wait a minute, this looks like the regular, that's a place. I think I screwed up something there. Because that was actually a place response, not a places, nearby places response.
Right.
So something weird happened there. Not sure. All right, we'll just skip that for now, since you saw it anyway when I did the demo. Okay, so when I want to look up place details, and I think I screwed that up too.
Yeah,
actually.
you're right. You're doing the nearby search again.
Yeah. I clearly did not paste things directly into these. Oh right, this is going to format horribly. So we'll go over here quick and where the hell did it go? There. We'll paste that into there first, and then place it in here because that way it won't be terrible. There. All right. So place details. So we have that, and we're giving it a place ID.
That one takes the place ID over.
Right. So that one's a little weird. And then we're going to output the name, website, international phone number, and formatted address. So again, we have a result set that looks like that.
Yeah.
Pretty straightforward, right? And is this going to be... Yeah, so this is it. This is what you'll see as a full result set. So yeah, it does have the open and close hours for every day and all that kind of stuff, which is pretty cool.
And
Has all this-
photos and everything.
and photos and reviews, all kinds of crazy stuff in here.
I'd love to see the reviews on the Taft Monument.
Well, we will be looking at that momentarily here. So, all right.
That would be another piece of information. The altitude at that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's in there.
I don't know if that was in there or not.
Maybe not.
But anyway, there's a review right there.
I'm disappointed with the food.
Overpriced for what you get. Not
Great
really.
beer. Okay, so there's our result set. We'll skip the caveats for now and go to the command line and do a little test here. So we're going to do Perl place, and we want to do, what was it that we wanted to do?
Yeah.
Taft
Yeah.
Monument.
The Taft Monument. Where the hell do you see? Oh, yeah, President William. There we go.
Is everyone doing okay over here?
No, thank you.
Okay, so we're doing the Taft Monument, and I should have moored that. All right. So here's the Taft Monument. Apparently, it is on Shelley Drive. Shaley Drive? Schley Drive? Okay. In Arlington. Hey, there's a phone number for the Taft Monument.
We're
So-
guessing that it's probably the phone number of the Park Service.
Yeah, that's probably true. So
And
there
there's some photos.
There are some photos. There aren't any reviews, it looks like. No reviews of the Taft Monument.
Oh, it's a cemetery. Is he buried there? Maybe.
Maybe. So, anyway, that's that. Maybe we should. Maybe we should also.
What's near Arlington?
I'm gonna run that again, and this time we'll do a different one that might have some other stuff in there, like maybe the. I don't know. What do you want to do? The Monument Parking Company?
Yeah, there we go.
See how they work. Ooh, it is a type of sub-premise. I haven't seen that one before.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Let's see here.
So that must be like a suite inside a bigger office.
Right. International phone number, the Monument Parking Company, Inc. Opening hours. Got all of our hours of operation. Oh, they're lazy bastards. They're closed on Saturday and Sunday. Come on. Come on.
They're open till 10, dude. It's
Yeah.
not too bad.
All right, so then we let's move on a little bit here, and no reviews on that thing either. So I don't know.
Well, types of parking and,
Still, you should
if
review
they're
parking.
closed on weekends, I bet that they run parking lots for government buildings.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. So
Yeah, but people
it's monument
see the
park-
monuments for public in the parking parking lots. These are probably, I'm guessing these are parking lots for government workers.
yeah, and the other thing, there for the Taft Monument, it's a cemetery. How often do you read reviews or leave reviews of
Right.
cemeteries?
Yes.
So, and if Google even allows a review of a cemetery, I don't know. So,
well, they usually have national parks and there is a visitor guide, you can say like, Yellowstone Park, we need more escalators.
My brother got eaten by a bear.
my brother got eaten by a bear. That would be great feedback to leave. I'm going to do
He took my wrong grandmother. Would not marry again.
that. Okay, so with that, we'll move into a few caveats about the Google APIs. So that's it for the Google APIs for the backend stuff, I should say. You have to. One thing that you have to remember, because I kept screwing this up over and over, as I would use a new API, I would forget to enable it, because I'm thinking, oh, I have a key, it should just work. And no, you actually have to enable each API separately.
Did you get 2,500 calls on each API or 2,500 total across all of them?
It is unclear, but the way it reads, it sounds like per API you get 2,500 calls. But it is unclear, and I have not tested that to its limit, so I don't know for sure.
If you're in doubt, they won.
So there is the limit of 2,500 requests per day, which is another big caveat, and again, it must be pricey because it's called for pricing.
And you have to tell them which domains these are going to be called from, or at least they
Actually,
used to.
you don't have to do that anymore. You can do that as a security precaution so that other people can't use your requests, but
So that's not mandatory anymore.
not mandatory anymore. No, that's still an option to put in, but it's not mandatory. And then, oh right, yes. So there's a however here, but I didn't put the first part of the however. So there are a metric crap ton of Perl modules for geocoding. Tons and tons and tons of them. I tried 6 of them. I still use one, but I'm going to phase it out. They're all crap because they make everything really complicated, way more complicated than it needs to be. And I don't know why. They just decided, hey, let's throw in a few more extra modules here for no apparent reason.
How old are they?
There's some that are still maintained actively. So like,
But when were they written?
oh, when were they written? I don't know. I didn't look.
Because I suspect they might be.
It could be old. It could be old. But anyway, most of them are more complicated than they need to be, and or include a lot of extra libraries that don't work or whatever. There is one exception where you might want to use one of those libraries, which is there are 2 modules. One's Geo Coder All, and another one called Any, and those take all those other modules and wrap them up into a unified API. So if you did need to call OpenStreetMaps and Google, you could do that through a unified API. You don't have to know about the nuances of each. So that's cool. But other than that, I can't think of a reason to use them because you saw how short the code was there to actually make calls yourself. So anyway, yeah, my code was actually longer using the modules than it was using HTTP Tiny.
That's a bad sign.
That's what I thought too. So anyway, so yeah, I think that's it for caveats. So see, I must have put all this on another slide. I put the however on the previous slide because I'm a moron. Okay, so if you would like to put a Google map inline, so let's say you've on the back end you have looked up and you've got a latitude and longitude by doing some searching or whatever, you could then use this little script here to JavaScript inline into your page to display that map on your page and add a little marker exactly where the thing is and label it and all that kind of stuff. You can of course access all of those APIs via JavaScript as well, or via a phone SDK, or any number of other things. Google has lots of documentation for lots of different languages and SDKs and stuff like that, so no matter how you want to do that, you can. But since we were doing this in Perl, we were doing backend requests via Perl, then I have my Latin long via that, and I feed that into my page via template toolkit or whatever, and now I can render that map out on the page. Pretty simple and straightforward. The most complicated part is adding the marker. Actually rendering the map is basically just that first part at the top there, and then all the rest of that stuff is for your marker and zoom location and all that sort of stuff. So anyway, simple. Anyway, that's inlining.
If you want an interactive inline map, that gets a whole lot more complicated.
If you do want it to be interactive, well, this is
Not a whole
interactive.
lot, but-
This is interactive in that you can zoom and scroll and all that kind of
Right.
stuff. If you want to have lots of other markers, or you want stuff to be
Yeah.
searchable, or any of that kind of stuff, that's where it gets complicated.
But not actually terribly so.
It's not terrible, but it's not great
Yeah.
either. Especially if you want to display lots of data, it becomes actually fairly complicated. You can also do very quick links, so you can, without any code backend wise at all, if you just want to have a link to driving directions, if you just type in maps.google.com !DAdder, So we're doing driving directions addresses. You can just type in the address that you want them to navigate to and then say driving directions. Done. And so now you're not actually doing any back-end calls, you're not doing any front-end displays of maps, you're just literally putting a link on your page. So it's cool that they've made it relatively simple to use the URLs for Google Maps this way, that you're not having to put in a lot of crazy extra stuff. You can if you want, but you don't have to. So anyway, that's it. Questions?
So what does tabletop events use it?
Tabletop events. All right, let me, I'll pull up a demo of it quick. Let's see, do I
Because
actually?
that's what drove you to do all this, right?
Right, yeah, so I built tabletop events, which is, so tabletop, let me explain what tabletop events is first. Tabletop events is a convention management system for tabletop games. So if you run a tournament at your game store, you need a way to have people sign up for that tournament. If you run a convention that has games, maybe you run a little mini Comic-Con, or you run an actual tabletop game convention, or a Magic the Gathering convention, something like that. You need people to be able to sign up for a badge, then you need to sign up for individual events within that convention. So, you got a badge so you can come there, but now you need to sign up because you want to play Axis and Allies, and then you want to play Settlers of Catan, and then you want to play Dominion. You need to sign up for each of those because each game only has X number of player slots in it. So you need a way of managing all that stuff. And technologically speaking, the game world is way behind in that sort of thing. They just are terrible at convention management. The bigger cons have kind of written their own things. The littler cons either do nothing, or they do paper, or they use this site called Warhorn, which kind of does this, except it's free to use, that you donate to it, sort of like Wikipedia or whatever. But it doesn't allow you to actually sign up online for anything. It just allows you to list your events. So it's not like it's not a full featured system. And it's not built in a modern way. So like if you want to sign up for an event with Warhorn, you email them, or you fill out a little form which ultimately emails them, and then you get a little thing back that says, we will set up your convention within 2 to 3 business days. Like, that's not very modern. Usually 2 to 3 business seconds, okay, sure, but
You were worried about 15 seconds.
yeah. So anyway, so that's why I built tabletop events. Let's see, do I have it running? It appears I do have it running. See if I can. Yay! Okay. All right. So this is tabletop events website, and right now there is very little here that it does yet. But to your
nice graphic there. I like it.
thank you. Because this is not, this is not public yet. This is still something I'm actively developing. There is, normal people don't even see these 2 links up here. This is like, when you come to the site, it's just that page. That's all you can access. But I am running a convention on it right now, or I'm running signups for a convention on it right now, as I'm actively developing it, because I like to eat my own dog food. But going back to what do I need the geolocation stuff for? I want to create a group. So I will type in big, warm, fuzzy Steve's group. And he, Sheboygan. Okay. I don't even know how to spell Sheboygan. Okay,
It comes up for you.
there you go. So what I did was, this Sheboygan must be 25,000 people or more.
Oh yeah.
So what I did was I actually found a list on the internet of all the cities that are 25,000 populous or more, and pre-imported them into the system.
Do you include Canada?
Everything in the world.
Oh, cool.
Every city in the world that has 25,000 people or more are imported. But if you wanted to go to some place that does not have that, let's say you wanted to go to Edgerton.
Wanakee.
Wanakee? Okay.
Not gonna be it. It's W-A-U-N.
A-U-N? Is that how you spell it? I should know how to spell that, but I don't. Okay, so I can do that, and it'll just allow me to create a new city if it looks up successfully, it will create it. If it doesn't, it won't. And then it's there for other people to use from that point forward. So then I can create this, and you know, I still have that. Now you have to go to Wonky. Right. So you have that kind of stuff going on. And then you might want to create a convention, and this is where it gets a little bit more crazy. So by default, it's going to use your group's location, but you can override that if you want. Let's say I'm going to do that. I'm going to go to lacrosse instead. And we're going to create SteveCon 2015. Okay. And that's going to be in lacrosse. And so now I'm at SteveCon's page. There's nothing here yet, but I can set up some stuff. I can do descriptions, whatever. But I also need to set up a venue. So I can go in here and I can search what venue that I want to run this at.
UW Extension Lacrosse.
So Lacrosse Center. Wait, UW Extension?
Yeah.
Doesn't show up. It's not a thing.
Okay.
I can try it actually.
It would show up as UW Lacrosse.
There we go.
There we go.
Student center of some kind.
Yeah.
So.
Other different UW. Or the police department.
We're going to hold it at the police. So we'll do UW Lacrosse. So that's all well and good. You know, you have to set up your venue. And once you've set up your venue, now I can go back to, I can go back to the homepage for SteveCon. And now it shows me the map of where I am. It gives me some driving directions. If UW Lacrosse had a phone number listed there, it would allow me to do that too. So I'm going to go back in here and change this now. So we're going to actually move this to an entirely new place. Do you know of a name of a venue in Sheboygan?
UW Sheboygan.
Oh, okay. Sheboygan.
It's my alma mater. Home of the Fighting Wombats.
No, really?
Yeah, really.
Sheboygan County UW Extension. Okay, so we'll go there and we'll see if indeed. Oh, they do have a phone number for that one, so that's nice. They even have a website, yes. So anyway, so I have all that kind of stuff built in, and then also in there I need to know time zones about locations so that I can automatically adjust stuff. You got to set up your dates. So your convention is going to happen on Friday, and we're going to do that in, let's say, September the 11th. What's that?
What is that date time picker?
The date time picker is, I don't know. I can look it up. I don't know off the top of my head.
It looks nice.
It is nice. It's something from Angular. I mean, it's not made by Angular. It's made by somebody else. But I'll look it up for you in a second.
Okay.
So we're going to start at 8 a.m. on September 4th or September 11th. That's what it was. Yeah, September 11th, and we'll end at 7 p.m. and whatever. So anyway, if this was in a different time zone,
Yep.
I need to be able to automatically convert it from whatever your local time is to their time, and that way, and then from that point forward, all the time needs to be relative to the location of the convention. Just like at an airport, they always tell you the time relative to the airport, not relative to where you came from or where you are now or any of that kind of stuff. So convention date times are a little different than you would do in other things. Anyway, so that's why I needed all this geolocation stuff, is I needed to be able to pull up maps and how do you get to the venue, and like, you want to find a gaming group in your local region? Well, I need to know what your local region is and what other gaming groups are in that local region. And when you're doing the time zone stuff, I needed all that. So this is why I got into all the geocoding stuff. Anyway, so back to the question that you had about what is that thing? Where the heck did I put that? Probably.
Can't you just bring up the webpage and hit source?
It is simply called Angular Bootstrap Date Time Picker.
So it's part
It's-
of Twitter Bootstrap? Or?
No, it's published by Knight Ridder. They're a publishing company that does a lot of newspapers and stuff.
Yep.
So anyway, I got it off of GitHub, so you can just go up there. But anyway, Angular Bootstrap Date Time Picker. Okay. So anyway, that's that. So, any other questions, comments, or scathing rebuttal? I guess I can quit this thing.